Grace Thomas was the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking in. Her students at Maplewood Elementary called her Miss Sunshine, not because she was always smiling, but because she made them feel seen, even when no one else did. But one cold winter morning in New York, Grace sat silently in a sterile hospital hallway. The warmth she once carried seemed to have drained out of her completely. In her hand, she clutched a pink envelope, the results of her recent round of tests. Inside, just one line changed everything. You've been diagnosed with systemic lupus erythematosus. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. You'll feel tired, sore, overwhelmed. There may be days you can't get out of bed. It's chronic. There's no cure, just management. That same week, she received a notice from her landlord, 30 days to vacate. Her savings had dried up after months of confusing symptoms and unpaid leave. Friends offered kind words, but life moved fast in the city, and most had their own storms. Grace stared at herself in the mirror that night, the once bright teacher, the woman with dreams of starting a children's art foundation, now looked hollow. She whispered, "How do you stay positive when the world feels like it's caving in?" The next morning, Grace forced herself out of bed and onto a city bus. She had no destination, just needed to breathe somewhere other than the four walls of her apartment. She found a seat near the back, next to a woman humming softly and unwrapping candies from a worn floral bag. The woman, elderly with bright eyes and a warm scarf, offered Grace a tiny chocolate bar. "I'm fine," Grace said quickly, not even looking up. The woman chuckled. "Sweet things help on bitter days. Take it." Grace hesitated, then reached out. She didn't even like chocolate, but something about the woman's calm presence felt oddly comforting. "Why do you give candy to strangers?" Grace asked. The woman, Rosa, smiled. "Lost my husband, then my job, then my home. I nearly gave up. But one day, someone gave me a chocolate and said, 'This won't fix everything, but it's a reminder the world still has kindness.' I decided to pass it on." Grace blinked, surprised. "But doesn't it hurt to keep smiling when everything falls apart?" "Oh, it hurts," Rosa nodded, "but I smile not because everything is good. I smile because I believe it will be again." The bus stopped. Rosa stood, handed Grace one more candy bar, and said, "Positivity isn't denying pain. It's choosing to believe it won't last forever." Grace held onto that candy for hours, not for the taste, but for the hope it symbolized. A few days later, Grace stood in a small neighborhood grocery store with exactly $1.10 in her hand. She scanned the aisles, selecting the cheapest bread, eggs, and a tiny carton of milk. At the checkout, a commotion caught her attention. A man in his early 30s with tired eyes and a worn hoodie was fumbling through his wallet. Beside him, his daughter, maybe 4 years old, clung to a small stuffed bunny. "I'm sorry, sir," the cashier said. "Your card keeps declining." The man turned red, whispering to his daughter, "We'll try another place, sweetheart." People behind them groaned. One woman muttered, "Unbelievable. Just hold up the line." Grace stepped forward. Without a word, she placed her $1.10 bill on the counter. "Let it cover what it can," she said. The man looked at her, stunned. "You don't have to. I want to," she said softly. "Please." Tears welled up in his eyes. "You have no idea what this means." Grace just smiled. "It's okay. Someone reminded me recently. Pain doesn't get the final say." She left the store with nothing in her bag, but for the first time in weeks, her heart felt full. She had nothing to give, and yet she gave everything that mattered. Later that week, as she packed up the last of her apartment, Grace opened a dusty box of keepsakes from her years as a teacher. Among the thank you cards and class drawings, one envelope stood out addressed in purple crayon. Inside was a letter from Mia, a 9-year-old student she'd taught 2 years prior. "Miss Thomas, you told me that people are like candles. Even when the world gets dark, we can still shine. One day I'll be like you. When I grow up, I'll help people smile even when I'm sad. Thank you for being my light. Love me." Grace crumpled to the floor. The letter clutched to her chest as sobs overtook her. It wasn't sadness. It was the overwhelming realization that even when she felt invisible, her light had mattered to someone. She took a photo of the letter and posted it online with the caption, "I'm sick, I'm broke, I'm scared, but I found this today. Sometimes the light you give to others finds its way back to you. Stay kind, stay hopeful, stay lit." She didn't expect anyone to see it. But by morning, it had over 200,000 likes and thousands of comments from people across the world. One read, "You helped me more than you know. I was thinking of giving up tonight. Thank you for reminding me of light." 2 weeks later, Grace was invited to speak at a community mental health event downtown. She wore the same coat she'd worn on the bus that day, her pockets still carrying Rosa's chocolate bar, now melted but treasured. She stepped on stage, hands shaking, and looked out into a crowd of unfamiliar faces. I didn't plan to inspire anyone. She began, I just didn't want to feel alone in my pain anymore. She told her story, the diagnosis, the eviction notice, the kind stranger on the bus, the moment with the struggling father, and the letter from her student. I realized that being positive doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means believing that the darkness will end, and choosing to be a light until it does. The audience stood in a round of applause, many wiping away tears. Afterward, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. It was the cashier from the grocery store. I saw your post, she said. That man you helped, he got a new job and donated formula to 10 families the next day. Your kindness, it echoed. Another woman approached Rosa. She opened her arms and hugged Grace tightly. I knew you'd pass the light on, Rosa whispered. That night, Grace was offered a job by a nonprofit organization to lead youth wellness programs using art and storytelling. A community fund covered her medical bills and helped her move into a cozy studio near the park. As she walked home under the streetlights, a small boy ran up to her with a grin. Lady, want a candy? He asked, holding up a tiny chocolate. Grace laughed through tears and knelt down. Sweet things on bitter days, huh? She said, accepting it. She looked up at the sky and whispered, this is how you stay positive in a negative situation. You become the light you wish you had. This is the power of positivity. Not in ignoring the pain, but in choosing to believe that something beautiful can still come from it. Kindness, courage, hope, they echo. And sometimes in your darkest hour, those echoes return to carry you forward.